What is up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. It's Pokemon Day today, which of course is, I guess, a day for people to reflect on the phenomenon that is, well, Pokemon. And of course, if you grew up in the 90s like myself and you kind of built up to when it was released, you were there for when it exploded in the mainstream and was all that we talked about growing up at that time. You went through Red and Blue, and then you went through Gold and Silver, and from there on, it was just Pokemon games everywhere, merchandise, cards. The card game was pretty big. But yes, it's Pokemon Day, which is pretty cool to see. You'll see a lot of that all over the internet today. But there were some interesting things I wanted to talk about today to get into. Mild speculation on one part, but it's an interesting subject nonetheless that has to do with voice chat and PayDay 2 attempting to get on the app that Nintendo currently has. So that's actually kind of interesting to talk about just because of the implications that could lead into their online service. So today, let's get started. So PayDay 2. If you have bought it on the Switch, if you've read or seen any reviews, the one thing everyone brings up is this is a heavy focus on working with other people, specifically if you run into random people and there's no voice chat on the system or with this game technically. There is voice chat if you use the application that is then paired with your Switch, which only really works with one game right now, and that's Splatoon 2. Well, Kotaku reached out to StarBreeze, who of course is developing and then publishing alongside Overkill, in this case PayDay 2. And they asked them a bit about that, and this is what StarBreeze, at least a spokesperson at StarBreeze, had to say. We are waiting to be able to participate in Nintendo's VoIP app solution. As soon as we are given the go-ahead, this is definitely on our list to look into to update. So this situation is weird no matter how you look at it. We could say, oh, they weren't proactive. For some reason, voice chat just slipped their mind. This game, I guess they didn't think about it. Even though it's a heavily cooperative game, they just all of a sudden decided to ask them recently, maybe a week or two before the game came out. On the other hand, they could have asked them 6 months ago. They could have asked them when the game was, before it was even announced, right? But Nintendo isn't adding them on to the application for some reason. And if you look at it, there's one game that technically uses it right now, and that's Splatoon 2. Nothing else uses voice chat through that application. We saw the pushback, the blowback after we saw the accessory that needed to be used with that weird splitter Splatoon headset thing. And since then, it's been pretty quiet for having to use your cell phone with this system. We found out Splatoon 2 can actually use voice chat through LAN play, which is, again, crazy. You don't need the application for it to work. It technically is built into the system already. So here we are now, wondering why isn't PayDay 2 using this application? It's clear that they would need it, but Nintendo appears to either be dragging their feet or they don't want them on it. And I wonder why that would be. Why do you guys think Nintendo wouldn't want to add a game that clearly needs it to that application? I mean, they've been pretty, in this case, public about them wanting to get on the application to get some kind of solution to us. In fact, right now they're saying use Discord. Well, that's not really going to help with random matchups in this case, but sure, why not? So the big thing going around right now is it seems that Nintendo isn't very interested in their application for a voice chat solution. I actually think it works well for Splatnet, where you can look at all of your stats, things like that. I think that works great for that application, almost as like a basically like a sidekick to the game, right? Something you can use alongside of it, which is great. But it shouldn't be the main tool, and it almost feels like that online service that we're heading towards in September might rethink the way that they're having us use VoIP, voice over IP, or in this case, voice chat. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments if you think this makes sense and that Nintendo is dragging their feet because, well, we gotta wait till September to get that built-in voice chat, and that's something they're adding along with the service. They've told us it's what we're going towards is worth the wait. To me, worth the wait is things like voice chat, things like cloud storage, so we can actually get these saves off of our system, and then of course things with like virtual console. So let me know what you guys think about this. Do you think this is still pointing to that being the case where voice chat will be integrated and it's heading towards us with this September update for the online? Let me know, guys, down below. So we heard about the Naruto trilogy that was coming over in that Jump magazine that kind of detailed it, the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm that was coming over. The first three, we already know the fourth one is missing, at least for now. Maybe it's a release later on. It's like a download you can get if you have the trilogy. It's cheaper or something. Or maybe it's just its own release that's coming down the road. But this has had people questioning if this was kind of a rushed release, kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing. We heard about, in this case, Bandai Namco telling their investors they weren't ready. They weren't ready for the Switch, but now they're all in on it. They're going to start putting stuff on it. And we hear about this trilogy. It really comes up, months later. We now have a release date in Japan for it. And then they also tell us about the resolution both in docked and handheld mode, and it kind of threw some people off. So the first thing is it's actually coming out April 26th in Japan. It's going to be a full-priced game at 6,800 yen, so it'll be roughly about $60 in the United States here, and then it'll probably be more other places where they're used to having pretty expensive games. But in this case, the resolution is 900p in docked mode, and then it's 540p in handheld mode. Now, what's weird in this case, the Switch has a higher resolution than, say, the PS3 in docked mode, but a much lower one in handheld mode. The PS3 had a 720p resolution. Now, from what I've seen, the Xbox One had a 900p resolution of its own compilation of the Naruto games, but in this case, the Switch in handheld mode appears to have a Vita-like resolution, a 540p resolution. It's a very large gap between the docked and the handheld mode. Now, we have seen gaps before that, while not this large, they were larger. For example, Ukulele is 600p in handheld mode, 900p docked. The gap is, of course, smaller in that case. Even like Xenoverse 2, for example, had what was a dynamically scaling 720p resolution. I do know people were saying it was down 640p, 600p at times, and you can notice it when you're playing Xenoverse 2 that the resolution will drop. But of course, it's not 540p, and this is weird. I don't know if maybe it tries to hold 720p and they're just telling us what it could drop to at 540p, or if it's just 540p across the board. Is this going to be a situation where they release a game and then fix it later with a patch? That's the other question. Another question at this point is, are we getting everything on one cartridge, or is this going to be a situation where we get like the first one on the cartridge and then we have to download the other two? There's a lot of questions still here to be answered, and it's coming up pretty quickly towards the end of April. Now, we're going to find out a lot about how it looks in handheld mode, which is going to be a question a lot of people are going to have before they buy it. So at this point, I guess I'll be getting it to see how it looks on that screen. It's fortunate the screen is a little over 6 inches, so it can hide smaller resolutions like these, but we have seen bad situations with something like, in this case, Xenoblade 2, where the resolution would drop so much that we would notice it. Rhyme was very similar, so we'll have to keep an eye on this and see where it sits in handheld mode. It sounds docked mode is going to be perfectly fine. And then it's going to be this handheld mode. It's such a massive jump from 900p to 540p for the Switch. Maybe it wouldn't be able to hit 720p, but to not even attempt something like 600p or 680p or some weird resolution there is very interesting to see. Next up, let's talk about the Nintendo Switch's sales in France. Now, there was a magazine that came out that detailed some sales figures. One of the biggest one being the Switch had crossed the 1 million mark in France as soon as last week, is what they were saying. But in this case, it is a big milestone for the Switch in France. Now, it is, I believe at this point, the fastest system to get there, and it's on pace with the Wii and the PS4. And the Xbox One is going to be passed by the Switch soon in France. It took about 3 years for the Xbox One to get to where the Switch is now at the 1 million mark, and the Xbox One is somewhere around 1.25 or so million. So the Switch will be passing that, and it shows at this point that they did a great job with marketing and the appeal of that system in France. It's another market that people don't really see as being, I guess, big for a lot of these systems, but it can be. I believe the Wii sold over 5 million in France, so yeah, it looks like the Switch has attached well there, well in Japan. Europe, they're still, like parts of the UK they're still working on. And the United States, it's been well there. So the Switch seems to be cruising along pretty well, even in times when there were no real big releases. Still managed to take the MPD in January, and now it seems to have carved out a nice spot for it in France. So we'll see if any other countries have any other milestones they want to tell us about. We found out Japan is in Canada it was the fastest selling system there too. So the Switch seems to be cruising along pretty well. If you're from France, or you could let us know, maybe you live in France, maybe let us know in the comments if the marketing was really good there, or if it's just an appealing system really to the consumers there in France. Next up, let's talk a bit about Final Fantasy 15. Now, if you don't know, Final Fantasy 15 has been kind of ongoing with its DLC, something we're going to talk about here because we found out more information about more DLC that seems to be outside of the Royal Edition. But first, I want to touch on the PC version that seems to be looking pretty good with performance. And if you're still not sure after that benchmark, you want to see how it plays, like if you control it and maybe you're running through different parts, you want to kind of test your system further, a demo is now available. That's right, you can download it, I believe, on the Windows Store. I think you even have it on Origin and then also on Steam. It's about 20 gigabytes or so. It depends, I think, on where you download it as well, but it seems to be roughly 20 gigabytes, and it looks good on PC. So if you haven't tried it, I think it's worth it. And what's interesting here is, despite it being 20 gigabytes, the max file size of the full one will be over 150 gigabytes, but they did have an interesting excerpt that talked about the download size being 21 gigabytes actually. It actually contains the high-res 4K textures. These are automatically enabled if your PC meets the required specs, but in the full version of the game, the high-res 4K textures will be an optional download. So it may kind of vary in download size, right, depending on if you're using those 4K textures. So instead of it being 150 gigabytes, maybe it'll be like 60 or 70 gigabytes without those. Maybe you're playing at just a standard 1080p resolution, whether it's on your TV or maybe your 1080p or even 1440p monitor. But this is a good way to see, I guess, how your PC will handle in a real world setting rather than just a benchmark that you kind of watch. You can download it, you can play it, and one, see if you like the battle system, I guess. Maybe you didn't play it on consoles, but two, you can see how your system fares when you control and kind of run around and see how everything works. Also about the DLC, yes, it looks like more episodes, 4 of them actually, are coming in 2019. So the Final Fantasy 15 train is not stopping. It seems to be speeding up actually with the inclusion of the PC version and now more DLC. So that Royal Edition that you may be looking at, probably going to be the halfway mark, is what I'm thinking. And then we'll get a definitive edition, then they might look at more DLC. And this came way of an interview through Famitsu with Mr. Tabata himself saying, yes, if you say that active users are seeking further filling of the main part, I think that it is not so. And as a producer, I think that Final Fantasy 15 cannot be completed so that episode delivery, so far I'm considering a different new deployment. Arden's episode, which was the most hopeful in the user questionnaire to pioneer it. Also, as I mentioned in ATR, Final Fantasy 15 distribution program, there may be episodes of Luna. In 2019, I decided to produce 4 episodes. That's good old Google Translate there, helping me out, of course, with some weird grammar at times. But the biggest thing is that last line saying, yes, 2019, 4 more episodes that will be outside, I guess, the scope of the Royal Edition of what that gives you. Seems to be a halfway mark to get people caught up now, and then looking towards 2019 for more episodes. This is probably the closest I've seen so far to a single-player service-based game, like how we see games as a service being a thing. So much DLC. We got a season pass. That's probably going to fall out. There's going to be a second season pass. This is obviously falling outside of that. This is probably one of the biggest bits of DLC I've seen for any game. I mean, how much it's getting. And it shows how expensive this game was to create and how many issues they had. And this was originally a PS3 game forever ago, and it came out recently, and here's the PC version. Here's more DLC. I mean, we get a Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition. The Final Fantasy 15 train is not slowing down, and whether you like it or not, more DLC appears to be coming. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today for Newswave. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave a bunch of comments down below about everything we talked about today. Whether you want to talk a bit about the PayDay 2 situation, where really StarBreeze is trying to get voice over IP on this thing, but Nintendo hasn't given them permission, hasn't really talked to them about it. According to them, with Kotaku, that's the case right now. Do you think some kind of voiceover solution is in the future away from that application that I'd say 98% of people didn't want to use after we saw the ridiculous setup with the headset and everything? But let me know about that. Also, let me know what you think about this ongoing situation with Final Fantasy 15, the game that will probably have an insane amount of DLC when it's all said and done. Maybe you're excited because you like the story, you like the cast of characters, you like the PC version, and you would like to really keep that story going rather than have to buy into another universe with another Final Fantasy and start to rebuild that story. Maybe it's the story is so deep for you, you really like seeing this, or maybe you're just tired and you're ready for Final Fantasy 16. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.